am your creation. From the ground I walk on, to the moon, planets, galaxies, and beyond. I look up into the night sky, one creation, marveling at another. I'm only one of 7.5 billion other souls surrounded by stars too many to number. So I struggle with my significance. How can the God of the universe love someone like me who is filled with so much sinfulness? Yet you know the number of the hairs on my head. I am unworthy. I deserve death. But you came down from the heavens as a child, destined to die in my place instead. And now you reside in my heart. And you promised to return and take me home. But your word says no man knows the day and the hour is unknown. So in this Christmas season, I wait for my King to come.
Welcome to your Christmas Eve online experience. We've been preparing, practicing, and praying for months for this moment. Our hope is that you recognize and receive the hope and joy of Jesus the King in a way that changes your life and the life of those around you. Let's be real, this year has been long. It's kind of felt like a really, really long and hard winter. A winter without Christmas. But it's finally Christmas, and with that brings this almost magical sense of hope. We believe that hope and joy, the lasting hope and joy that sticks around all year, starts with the birth of Jesus, the baby who was born as both God and man, who came to this broken world as the rightful king to set all things right. And as we have hoped this year for things to be better, for 2021 to be better, we know that Jesus has promised that hope, that better future for those who choose loyalty to Him. Now we're going to begin to sing and worship together. But before we do, I want you to know that at the end of this time, we're going to have a candle lighting moment as we sing the song Silent Night. I want to encourage you to take a moment during our time to go find a candle or a match, or you can use your phone if nothing else, and that you would join with us in that time. And now I want to invite us to all sing together of the joy and hope we have in Jesus.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare Him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and heaven.
In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to his own town to register.
So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child.
While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in the clothes and placed him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn.
And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them,
"Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in clothes and lying in a manger."
Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying,
Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men, on whom his favor rests. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about."
So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph.
and the baby who is lying in the manger.
When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them.
But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told.
Like a frost on a rose, winter comes for us all. Oh, how nature acquaints us with the nature of patience. Like a seed in the snow, I've been buried to grow. For your promise is loyal, from sea to sequoia, and I know though the winter's long, even richer the harvest it brings. Though my waiting prolongs, even greater your promise for me, like a seed. I believe that my season will come. sake of us all. From Bethlehem, soil, grew Calvary's Sequoia. Oh, oh, oh.
In Washington, D.C., at a metro station on a cold January morning, a violinist played 6 Bach pieces. That day, about 2,000 people went through the metro station, most of them on their way to work. At 3 minutes, a middle-aged man stopped for just a few seconds hearing the music and moved on. At 4 minutes, a younger man leaned against a post and his watch caught his eye, so he hurried on. At 6 minutes, he got his first $1. A lady pulled $1 out of her purse, dropped it in the hat, and without losing stride, continued on. At 10 minutes, a little boy stopped, and his mom gave him a big yank and kept him moving, but the whole time the little boy just kept looking back, wanting to see the violinist. That actually happened several times between children and their parents, and each time the parent pulled the child along. At 45 minutes, 6 people had stopped for just a few moments to listen to the music. 20 people had given money for a total of $32. When he finished, no one noticed. There was no recognition. No one applauded. No one realized that day that the violinist was one of the greatest musicians in the world. The violinist was Joshua Bell, who played some of the most intricate music ever written on a $3.5 million violin. Just 2 days prior, he filled a theater in Boston where people paid $100 a seat to listen to him play the very same music. The greatest musician, some of the most intricate music ever written, a $3.5 million violin, and no one got it, no one noticed. Some children almost got it, but their parents blocked them. That day, Joshua Bell showed up at that metro station in a way that he was easily missed. And this Christmas Eve, I remind us that Jesus showed up in our world in a way that he was easily missed. This Advent season, we have been focused on this theme, the winter of waiting, because not only were the Jewish people waiting 400 years for their prophesied king, for God to come and make things right for them, we have been waiting in 2020 for things to get better. Jesus was easily missed. He didn't come and set up a kingdom. He didn't come and wipe out the Romans. He didn't come and revamp healthcare. And as we've talked this Advent season about Jesus as the King of grace, the King of salvation, the King of joy, the King of kings, for some of us, he's also easily missed. You might even be saying, if Jesus is the King of grace, why can't I get a break? What am I missing? Or, if Jesus is the King of salvation, why are my loved ones not turning to him? What are they missing? And if Jesus is the King of joy, why is the world so miserable and people spewing hate? And if Jesus is the King of kings, why doesn't he just make everything right? What's going on? to get some insight into this, we're going to look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 6, just one verse from Matthew's account of the coming of Jesus. It's from the story when 3 wise men came to Herod, who, by the way, he loved to be called King of the Jews. And they come and they say to him, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews?" And I'm sure Herod took a little gulp. And he went and he talked to some of the religious leaders, the scholars of the day. And they opened up their scrolls and quoted for him a 700-year-old prophecy from the book of Micah. And in Matthew chapter 2, verse 6, it goes like this. "And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah. For out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Herod found out that the King of the Jews would be born in Bethlehem. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. It's why we have the song, "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And it's why the song goes like this. "Yet in thy dark street shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight." The everlasting light, the hopes and fears of all the years comes to Bethlehem. And you'll notice that in the verse they quoted, it says, "O you, Bethlehem, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah." It's actually a reassurance that was surely needed in Jesus' time, because at this time, Bethlehem was a backwoods, insignificant place, although at one point it had been a very important place in the history of the nation of Israel. They, at that time, like us, they had their biases. They would have expected the king to come from Jerusalem, the city of kings, the place of the temple. And we have a similar bias. We expect important things and important people to come from big cities like Dallas. And if you're from Texas, you surely don't expect those things to happen in some of these little Texas towns where you drive through them and it's population 82, population 133. So just for a moment, I want us to think about Bethlehem like Luckenbach, Texas. Now, I mentioned Luckenbach, Texas, because I was riding my bike for about a week in the hill country of Texas one year with my daughter and some other friends. And we would start every day in Fredericksburg, where we were staying, and we would ride to one of these small Texas towns. And one day, Luckenbach, Texas was on the schedule. And I was so excited. In 1977, when I was a mere 16 years old, the #1 country song sung by Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson was Luckenbach, Texas. So we ride to Luckenbach, Texas that day, and there's a few dilapidated buildings, this post office that looked like a souvenir shop, because it was no longer needed because Luckenbach, Texas had their zip code retired in 1971, population 3 people. To add insult to injury, the guys who wrote the song, Luckenbach, Texas, had never even been there. Waylon Jennings never even liked singing the song. Luckenbach, Texas, what a disappointment. Bethlehem, what a disappointment. Jesus coming to an obscure backwoods town without an army, without an agenda to make it all right. What a disappointment. Why? Why obscure places like Bethlehem? It's actually God's tendency throughout the whole Bible to use obscure places, insignificant things to bring his message to bring the good news, to actually present his king. And it's not just places, it's people. God's tendency is to use insignificant, small people to bring the good news. People like Abraham in the Old Testament, to David, who was a shepherd, to women who are mentioned throughout the whole Old Testament, and Matthew includes them in his genealogy in a way that would have been shocking for the people of that day, to shepherds who get an angel and they get to go out and proclaim the good news to a place like Bethlehem. And I want you to know that these obscure places and insignificant people, they're not an afterthought to God's plan. They are at the heart of God's plan. Remember, the prophecy about Bethlehem was 700 years before the coming of Jesus. Here's the good news of Christmas today. God came in a way that you and I could receive him. God came in a way that you and I can receive him. A theologian named A.W. Tozer, he wrote a book entitled The Knowledge of the Holy. In his book, he wrestles with God is holy, he's all-powerful, he created the universe. And when you look at the Old Testament, when his own sinful people would get close to him, they would die. And in the book, he says this: to describe the coming of Jesus, the awful majesty of the Godhead was mercifully sheathed in the soft envelope of human nature to protect mankind. The awful majesty of the Godhead was mercifully sheathed in the soft envelope of human nature to protect mankind. The song, O Little Town of Bethlehem, says, Christ is born of Mary. Jesus became a baby. I want you to imagine Jesus, who the Bible says he was the eternal Word, that through him all things were created, and apart from him nothing was created that has been created. He had to learn to talk. What's going on? God wraps the gift of Jesus in a way that you and I can receive him. He wraps the gift of Christmas in insignificance and smallness and obscurity so that we can get close. And for sure, he does it in a way that he could be easily missed. But he ensures that every open heart can receive him. The Bible says that as many as received him, to them he gives the right to become children of God. That as many as received him get hope for today in 2020 in the waiting. And as many as received him, we get a promise of an eternal future in his kingdom where everything will be made better. And if you haven't, right now, you could believe in him. You could just say, Jesus, I believe in you. Your life, death, resurrection, for all the things, all the sin that keeps me from God. Now, for those of us who are familiar, I want to say to us this Christmas Eve, don't miss Jesus. Don't miss Jesus. And I'm sure that there were people that day at that metro station who walked by Joshua Bell, didn't even notice him. I'm sure there were some people who knew music. I can imagine there were some music teachers, maybe even a violinist, and they missed him. Don't miss Jesus. You know, you might want to say to him right now in your own heart, Jesus, don't let me miss you. And I think we say this every year, but to make this really practical, I want to encourage you that you would find a time in the next 24 hours. It might just be 5 minutes where you just get alone, you sit in the quiet, and you take advantage of your opportunity, your privilege to sit with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, to hear him sing over you, to play his music over you, and to speak to him. For those of you who aren't quite there and are open to just knowing more, and maybe all the fears and concerns and worries of 2020 are already creeping into 2021, we have an article for you online that we have written entitled, What If 2021 is Not Better? And in that article, you'll read about some of the people over history, real people who have believed in Jesus and how he has given them hope in the midst of waiting. And as I finish, I want to encourage us now, all of us, to practice not missing Jesus as we sing together, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus.
Born to set thy people free
in this season, as we go, may you find rest, be at peace. Jesus is still on the throne. Hope is closer than you think. May you find joy from our King. May he bless you and keep you. Merry Christmas.